Hello and welcome to the Guest Education Global Leadership Summit. Thank you so much for joining us. We're pleased to introduce our fantastic panel for this follow-up discussion on embarking on the new normal for schools to see what developments schools have had over the past 6 months since the start of the new academic year. The chair and moderator, Yannicka Arnez, Director of the Universal American School, Henning Fries, Chief Operating Officer of the Dwight Schools, Kevin Fulbrook, Deputy Director of Al Bayan Bilingual School in Kuwait, and Mohammed Saad, Director of Ajal International School. We hope that you enjoy the discussion, and over to you, Yannicka.
Thank you very much, Danny. It's a pleasure to be here today. As you said, we sat together like this about 6 months ago, 2 weeks after we had all opened this academic year, probably with a little bit of a different state of mind at that time. The new normal is becoming more and more normal and maybe less and less new, but it is just as much a new normal that drives us through this academic year. I think we are all in a similar situation. We know that this is in fact our normal, at least for the academic year 2020-2021. And I'm really pleased to be back with the three panelists who shared experiences from the startup. And we'd like to start our session today also with a little bit of a recap from the last 6 months, and for also our leaders who are listening to us and watching, for them to understand where you are with your students. So maybe I'm just going to go around kind of my screen virtual table here, and Mohammed, you are to my top right here. So, Mohammed, where are you with your students? Could you give us a recap of your learning situation at the moment?
Thanks, Yannicka. Yeah, sure. Allow me first to welcome back the colleagues, Henning and Kevin, and you too, Yannicka. And it's good to be back together after 6 or 7 months. It has been very interesting. The academic year 2021 is not shaping up, has shaped up to be no different than to the end of last academic year. It has been, it had its ups and downs. In term one, we started with face-to-face students on campus, mainly in the primary school. Our secondary school were still online. Of those primary school students, we had around 60-65% face-to-face against 30 to 35%, 40 to 35% online. We fast forward to the start of term 2. As we all know, in the UAE, it has been online for the first 5 to 6 weeks. We all came back to face-to-face learning from the 14th of February. And we've been offering face-to-face since then, with the online option still available. However, it has been reversed a little bit. We had a drop in the face-to-face percentages to around 40-45% against 60-55% online students. And this is due to the spike in cases from the beginning of January. So the whole situation has switched. And we hope that between now and the end of the term, things will go back to the way we started in term 1.
Thanks a lot, Mohammed, for sharing that. And Henning, if we move to you, because you're also in the UAE, and then we'll come to you, Kevin, and you can give us a different country perspective as well. That being said, Henning, of course, you represent multiple countries, so you might want to share a little bit of the experience from around the globe as well.
Yeah, sure. No, first of all, it's great to be back. It's good to see you all after 6 months of fun and excitement. I'm very pleased to say that our school in the UAE has been open since the beginning of the academic year, and has really gone from strength to strength. There have been a few days where we had a few close calls, but by and large, it's been quite smoothly operating. And it's fair to say there's a certain routine has also set in. Students, parents, faculty, administrative team has really sort of gotten used to this new way of working, a new way of interacting with one another, and this is really good to see that everybody has sort of gathered up and embraced that challenge. Slightly different picture in one of our schools internationally in London. Unfortunately, the regulator, as you may understand, in the UK, a different situation than we have here in the UAE, has decided to close all schools. So we are waiting to go back back into physical on campus as of next week, which we are really excited. Of course, students and parents and everybody's really excited to bring everybody back. And that's been quite a long break now for that school. Again, hopefully there's now some end in sight to that situation. Our campus in Seoul, as well as in Shanghai, has been operating throughout. Even when I believe I spoke about this last time back in September, they've already passed certain stages much earlier than the rest of the world, and of course the schools are benefiting from that. Last but certainly not least, our campus in New York has also been operating. It's one of the first, one of the few private schools that actually opened up back in Manhattan, and has been consistently operating ever since, with very stringent protocols in place. It's a larger school. And as you probably appreciate, real estate in New York is not as easy to accommodate social distancing. So there have been some really interesting ways found to make sure that this school is operating and students continue their teaching and learning. But again, we're very pleased that there also is sort of an easing of things in sight, and hopefully, we'll all be benefiting from this.
Henning, thank you for sharing that, and absolutely kudos to Dwight School New York for operating in a challenging landscape. As you said, facilities not necessarily giving the same opportunities as some of our schools, maybe here, and particularly in the Middle East, where space might be a little bit more abundant for many of us. So good to hear those perspectives. Is there anything in particular, Henning, from your schools in Asia? As you said, they were ahead of us in the exposure, and therefore a great learning to be drawn from that. But anything in particular that you would want to share that could be useful for us that are either in the Middle East or in Europe or in the Americas, following suit?
Well, I think it's more of a general point, and I think we've seen that not just in our school community, but generally how residents and individuals in this part of the world have responded to the threat of COVID. We have to understand that a few years back there have been a number of incidents, a number of viruses that have circulated which have affected those areas. So there was a much easier, a much faster response to the society to brace that challenge, and social distancing, wearing of masks, and certain protocols that we in other parts of the world took us some time to adopt. And I think everybody has benefited from it, not just the education, not just schools. I think generally, generally the countries have benefited from a much faster response, and also certain discipline and sticking to those rules. And we've seen that, of course, here in the UAE as well. UAE is far ahead of other countries where there have been a very clear pathway and very clear strategy to mitigate the risk, and that is working to the benefit. And we've seen it in other parts of the world where they did not have the same focus. As a school, we don't live in isolation, right? We do send students home every day to in their home environments and in the other activities and so on. So it's not just an isolated operation. We are as a school. We're just as much dependent on what goes on after school and before school, and before students are coming to join us. And so in general, our Asian campuses have benefited from the surrounding efforts to curb the spread of the virus.
Thank you. I think we definitely appreciate what you said from a UAE perspective, Henning. The benefit of being in a country where the regulations have been very clear for schools from day one, even before day one. And I'm sure that we have all spoken with lots of heads of schools around the world who are operating in places where it is less regulated, and therefore much more up to the individual school to find their way of doing things, at least in the beginning. I think I recognize also from our perspective here at Universal American School how grateful we felt that the regulators in the UAE were very explicit about the protocols that schools needed to follow, and it has helped us keep our community members safe at all times. And Kevin, how is this for you, and where are your students at the moment?
Yes, and unfortunately, there's not too much different to report from Kuwait. So Al Bayan Bilingual School, as all schools in Kuwait, we've just passed the 1-year anniversary of online learning. So our students have been learning online fully for the past 12 months, and that doesn't look like it's going to change in the near term. And what we're realistically looking at the moment, Kuwait is going through another spike of cases. So we're realistically looking at the next time that we could open up or welcome students on campus in some way is at the start of next academic year in September, which is going to be a very long time for our students to have been away from the campus. So we're sort of adjusting our thinking and our planning to what that could look like and how to best support our learners to return after such a long time away from on-campus learning.
Kevin, it's some anniversaries are not necessarily anniversaries that we want to celebrate, and I would say a 1-year anniversary for distance learning might not be the most joyful celebration as such, but really also compliments to you and all your fellow educators in Kuwait for managing such a challenging situation. I'd like to ask you to explore a little bit more the current situation that your students find themselves in, and your teachers, of course, because the well-being of students is globally a massive issue now, and a great concern for many of us and many regulators and many authorities around the world. And you are in a situation then therefore quite unique, where you have just one modality of teaching and learning right now. Everybody is doing distance learning. So could you walk us through how you're addressing the well-being issues, and how are your students coping? How are they progressing in this very odd new normal for you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because I think, as Henning referenced before, there's a sense of routine has set in. So after the initial rush of the move to online learning, and students and faculty and parents getting used to those big adjustments on top of everything else going on around the world and in the country, since then a sense of routine has settled in. And as teachers have refined their practices and adjusted their instructional practices, rethink how they assess, I've certainly had more, I think, time and space to pay a lot more attention to how do we look after the social and emotional well-being of our students and of their parents and of themselves as well. So, we spent quite a bit of time looking for ways that we can better connect our students and connect to some of that informal learning and non-structured time that the students are missing out on from on-campus learning, in the hallways, in recess, and, the ability to just go up to a student and check in with them and see how they're going. So, yeah, we've spent a lot of time trying to identify ways that we can connect with students informally and to check in on their well-being, not just take care of their academic progress, but all the other kinds of progress that we care about in terms of their holistic well-being. So, we've looked for other ways such as creating an esports club, for example. So things that kids are already doing, but then connecting them with their fellow classmates that they're not seeing anymore, but kids around the world as well, that, you know, looking for those kind of silver linings that exist in terms of, I can't remember a time where I've connected with so many people from around the world and having, you know, really great conversations. And the same goes for our students. So we've looked for different ways that our students can regain that sense of connection with their classmates, with their teachers, but with other students around the world that are going through similar things that they are. So they know they're not alone, and they know that they will be able to move past this, and eventually they will come back to school, and, you know, keep them connected to some of the great community work that they're used to doing as well, like regarding the climate and things like that. So in Kuwait at the moment, many things outside of schools are still open. So our students can still do beach cleanups, they can still volunteer their time and be involved in a range of other community-based activities and causes, which is really good and help to keep our students connected.
Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. I'd like to also maybe pass the same question over to you, Mohammed. And the situation for you is, of course, different, similar to what it is both for Henning schools and for us at UAS. We have both modalities happening at the same time: students in their classrooms and students doing distance learning. So in this new normal, even if the pandemic is probably still weighing us down somewhat, how have you found ways of ensuring that teaching and learning is happening in a high quality manner, that your students are progressing both academically, but also that their well-being is safeguarded?
Thank you, Yannicka. Well, look, I mean, the whole pandemic issue has given us the opportunity to reflect a lot on what we're doing as a school as a whole. We have actually managed to find a silver lining among all this uncertainty and the new normal and the online learning and the face-to-face learning and certain uncertainties. What we have done since term one is that we have aggressively pursued our academic model of teaching and learning, and to see how we can make sure that we are properly tracking our students' progress. We have put in place, we have adjusted our assessment policies just to be able to cater for the new normal in terms of the online learning and the face-to-face learning. And sometimes in the same section you have students that are online and others who are face-to-face, and when you are assessing, we needed to find a ways. So we have updated our assessment policies to cater for that. We have introduced more digital tracking systems to be able to monitor the students' progress, software like a Classroom Monitor, which has now been our bread and butter on a daily basis, where we track the students' KPIs on a weekly, monthly, termly basis, and then the evidence that we are collecting to back up our tracking has taken a very nice turn in terms of we need to make sure that the evidence has substance behind it. So in terms of making sure that teaching and learning is taking place, we have, as I said, we have pursued it aggressively, pivoted, adjusted, made all the necessary changes to the curriculum in order to make sure that it is still delivering the things that we wanted to deliver within the context of the pandemic. I know that we have had to trim down our curriculum to maybe into sometimes a skeleton structure, where we shed some of the what we call auxiliary subjects in terms of making sure that we're focusing on the main subjects, the sciences of this world, the English, the maths, the languages, and then we tried to look at the PE and the sports and the art and the other activities from a well-being, advisory perspective, and when we had formed working parties within the primary school and the secondary school to look after the students' well-being. So we introduced well-being into those subjects that are not necessarily getting the enough time during the set school day. So after school, in the evenings, projects, as Kevin described, have been part and parcel of that. So we have used this time to reflect on what we actually do, and we have discovered that there's a silver lining. For example, our digital and literacy world in the school has jumped immediately into the future, and the digital learning is now something that we do on a daily basis. So students can actually record themselves, for example, doing phonics in the primary school and send that video to the teacher without being actually in front of the teacher. So the assessment of phonics has now taken a new turn with the integration of the technology, the digital world. Our delivery of the curriculum has become more and more evidence-based. And the evidence varies between the digital evidence and the paper to digital evidence, with multiple aspects of assessment practices being used. So the whole 12 months that Kevin referred to has been a period of reckoning to us, of discovery, of making sure that we explore all options. We widen our horizon in terms of our delivery, and I think we have found a way of making sure that we are still being true to our ethos, our mission and vision of making sure that our students are learning.
A lot of perspectives to take away from 12 months of learning, and both similarities and differences across the UAE, Henning. What are you doing in your school group to ensure that your students remain motivated, that your teachers remain motivated, that there is progress in their learning, and that they will have a completion of the academic year that is actually going to benefit them at a level that we can be proud of?
Sure. Well, I think what really comes down to is now to deliver quality learning. One needs to look at motivation, well-being of everybody who's involved in that process, faculty and students alike. So we've asked ourselves, so what is really different from an online model versus a physical model? One key element, I'm stating the obvious here perhaps, is you're lacking the sense of being part of a community, because a physical community, and that falls away the minute you are in an online situation. So we've said, that's something we need to try and find a way of compensating for. And the other thing is sort of a certain level of energy that you do not have if you're not physically present with your classmates, with teachers in the school, right? So what's really lacking is sort of that kinetic energy that's not there all of a sudden when you are in a two-dimensional space as opposed to a three-dimensional space. So one thing that has worked well for us is using every opportunity there is to gather in a socially distant way, and sometimes it's online, or most of the kids it's been online in the past, through things like morning online music concerts, finding common things that a number of students have in common and that they want to share with the rest of the community. It's this type of activities that continues to build on that community, although they cannot be physically all in the same room. The other thing that worked really well for us is introducing certain levels of competition. So like introducing that energy into interaction. So for instance, we've had one of our schools has gone out to introduce Maker Mondays, where the design department has gone out and set a design challenge and a makers challenge for all students. And then they then had an opportunity at the end of the week to present what they have actually designed and what the ideas they've come up with. So, and of course, there's always a recognition of, who is really excelled, and it's introducing this type of competition that has really brought back the energy and continue to exude the energy that you are missing if you're in a two-dimensional space, right? So these were just one of those general wisdoms that we've sort of acquired throughout this situation.
I can also recognize that, and you definitely one takeaway from this is how we have to fine-tune our own creativity to come up with new ways of doing things to keep that engagement going for our students, which we know is so important and vital to their learning. So thanks for sharing. I'm sure that those ideas, Henning, are also very easy for other schools to pick up on because they're not difficult to implement. And I think that's another interesting question to ask you, because I think we are all looking for small, simple ideas that can be implemented easily, that can make a massive impact. And maybe we could go back to you, Kevin, and also ask you if there are any particular things that you have done differently that you can share with us that also could be a source of inspiration for other schools to maybe pick up on these. As Henning said, a challenge on a Monday just to get a competitive edge into the school that might engage students. What might you have done in your community?
Yeah, well, Henning's exactly right. Is that sense of energy that's kind of missing, and where we would have typically had lots of energy and students and parents really excited is our community events. When we welcome people in the afternoons, the evenings, and the weekends, there's always lots of music and energy and guest speakers and lots of things going on. So we've had to think creatively about how we can try and recreate some of that in the online world. So some are less obvious than others. For example, parent-teacher conferences, where we really had to think how they work and how we can better connect the students and the parents and the staff. And we found many positives came out of rethinking that, because you then become much more flexible in the timing and how people they don't have to leave work anymore to come to school and battle the traffic. They can join from their offices. And you can have more people in the call if that's what you want. So that was an unexpected win or success for us, that the current situation forced us to rethink and be more creative about how we offered that. We had our first TEDx conference based at our school as well. So we had students presenting on topics of interest and passion to them, and working with mentors, and learning the technical skills of how they're going to film themselves to present online as well, to bring that kind of energy, along with some international speakers as well. We had a sustainability summit. So we had over 100 middle school students come together and hear from some really inspirational people around the world around things they can be still doing around the climate crisis, and writing action plans and committing to things that they can do in their local community straight away. So the current situation forced us to think creatively and look for ways that we can represent this. And I mentioned before, we created an esports club at school. So our students are getting together regularly and having competitions against schools all around the world that are, love this kind of thing. It was a new concept to me, but our parents are on board, our kids love it. And that kind of thing, maybe that wouldn't have happened, or the imperative wouldn't have been there to really dive into that had we not found ourselves in this situation.
Thank you, Kevin. Can I ask a follow-up, Kevin, a question on that, Kevin, on the esports? Because I'm sure that that's definitely something that engages your students a lot, and maybe something that we hadn't thought of bringing into the schools at all. But were there any particular technical investments that you had to make that to make that happen, or is it something that could easily be implemented in schools where resources might not be abundant?
Well, we were fortunate that we could make a start on it with our existing equipment and technical setup that we had, that whatever students, their devices and platforms that they were using for online learning, we could adapt them for an esports environment. Now that we're looking to sort of scale up and get more in depth into it, we've been lucky to partner up with some organizations that are very keen to support it and support our students and develop them, not only in the technical skills of you know, gameplay, but the technical side of things, the commentating, you know, a whole range of different things that go into organizing and hosting and playing in tournaments. So it's been really interesting.
Great, thank you for sharing that. At the guest conference, there were some interesting exhibitors in last September. I think they also provide for this opportunity. Let us know if you want to go global with your competition. We'd love to enter into a global competition. I see Mohammed is also saying yes to that. Definitely at our school here at UAS as well. We'd love to start or set up esports, and maybe in 2021-22 academic year we could compete internationally in the Gulf region. Would be cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. Very good. Any thoughts, Mohammed, on kind of the even better if thinking? What would be your even better if ideas at this point? Maybe for the short term, for the rest of this year, for next year. Not necessarily because we will continue to be under the same kind of restrictions, but because we should take away learning from this experience and maybe bring forward, as Kevin also mentioned, virtual parent-teacher conferences might be something that you will never drop doing, because it actually gives an opportunity for parents to attend. So, Mohammed, any even better ifs that you could share with us?
But certainly, but I just want to follow up on Kevin's esports. It just takes me back to days when I was a teacher. That was 21 years ago. I've introduced at my school the first Sony PlayStation football tournament to the students. Funny enough, 21 years later, we're talking about esports in a pandemic world. So you can see that a change.
So innovation isn't always that new, huh?
Absolutely. I mean, look. I mean, again, I said earlier that there has been certain silver linings among all this, and the most important thing to me, at least, is that now I hope that we have all now being able to understand what the technology connectivity. There has always been apprehension towards technology, and especially in schools. And to be very honest with you, in 2019, just 1 year, almost a year before the pandemic, we prepared a big project at my school, going fully digital. And we did some research, we did questionnaires, we did a lot of work on it, and there was been a lot of backlash towards, no, we don't want that. Technology takes away from the reading. Nothing replaces the book. You know, these the cliches of statements that really do not necessarily mean anything to the people who are saying them. Fast forward 12 months, we've all immediately shifted to online learning. So suddenly the screen and the iPad and the tablet have become the closest to a student than anything else. The silver lining among all this is that we have all, I hope that we have all, schools, administrators, parents, students, teachers, discovered the real value of the digital connectivity. And as Kevin and Henning alluded to, especially Kevin, the parent conferencing online, this is going to stay with us. This is going to live with us for a long time. I'm going to give you an example. I hold a weekly coffee morning with my parents now. I mean, I've started that during the pandemic, during the lockdown, and that has carried over. And today, it was 10 o'clock every day, UAE time. There was with me in the meeting a mother who've had to travel to the United States for treatment, medical treatment. She was online in the coffee morning and she participated, she has contributed, and at the end requested that if we can start it 1 hour later because we finished at 11 o'clock our time, it was 2 a.m. her time. So all I'm saying is that the technology and connectivity through technology is the good thing that will carry on with us. And I want that not only that connectivity through meetings, but through teaching and learning. Teaching and learning can carry on outside the traditional 8 to 3 or 8 to 4 time frame of teaching and learning. It will carry on with the students and the teacher after school in the evening via a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting, or sharing of work, posting it back to the teacher. And then this is the kind of evidence that can be seen. This is the best thing that we can all take out of all this, that technology has just been parachuted on us by a tiny, very small virus from a city called Wuhan in China. And now technology is going to stay with us for a long time. We need to make the full use of it. We as educators in schools, we need to embrace it. We need to make it better. We need to use it to the betterment of our students, of our teachers, and especially of our connecting to each other. Now we see, I know how difficult it is, and I was reading about a study done by a university in the United States, which is now called the Zoom anxiety, how online meetings are causing anxiety among people. And one of the things that is causing this anxiety is that the camera is on and we can actually see ourselves. So these kind of things are now among us, and now we are self-aware of them. But on the other side of the spectrum, technology has offered a greater platform for us to learn and to improve and to move forward, to digitally track progress, digitally track the teaching and learning, and ensuring that our kids are achieving the targets that they're in terms of teaching and learning that's supposed to be achieved.
Thank you for that, Mohammed. Absolutely, digital connectivity hopefully is not something that we will debate in the future after we've all had, soft or hard learning during the pandemic. One thing that we reflect on a lot in our environment is actually the teachers' readiness for this move into a digital modality of learning, and that we haven't, because it was thrown upon us, we haven't necessarily had the approach that we would normally take with professional development, taking time to explore the multiple functionalities and ensuring that we use it in a sustainable and smart way. But Henning, in your environment, you have also piloted a cloud campus for a long, not even piloted, you piloted it a long time ago. You have an up and running online school. The digital connectivity is not new. Challenging time zones is not new. But in terms of making teachers ready, and I'm thinking particularly of teachers in our schools where we had to make this leap very quickly. Anything in particular that you would share from your learning or experience that could be helpful as we support our educators through the remaining months and forward?
No, sure. Like you've said, we're in a fortunate position that we did have an online school already since 2013. And really what it has helped us to do is sort of established ways of working and not having to create them on very short notice, but use already ways of working and tools and experience that was already there. So from that perspective, we were fortunate to realize that probably doesn't apply to the majority of all other schools. So I think really what we have to recognize, and you beautifully expressed it, Yannicka, we have not gone about this normal way, how you would get faculty and teachers prepared for this different way of delivering education. And in an ideal scenario, I suppose nobody would have chosen to just throw in people, students, parents, faculty in such a manner. But what it really has done is, it has really shown, how committed faculty can be and rise to the occasion. And I'm sure that's the case for many of the schools. They see the objective of delivering great education no matter what. And I think we all as school leaders, we benefit from that energy and from that approach. So there has really been a rapid upskilling, for better or for worse, of our faculty that has taken place. And I think really what the side effect of this is, perhaps before we were communicating and communicating with our students and teaching our students in a modus that actually is not conform with how they are communicating amongst themselves. And so now what has happened is we've come much closer to what the modus of our communication is in the generation that we're trying to educate. And that is actually a great opportunity, because trying to narrow this gap would have taken much longer and would have been much more difficult, but there was no other choice. Now, there have always been collaboration boards, video sharing platforms, and so on, which have now become mainstream tools for educators to use. And what it has done is it has actually allowed education to access much more effectively the students. Right, and I think this is, again, that's the silver lining we are all looking for. And you have so well described, Kevin and Mohammed and Yannicka. I think, and that's there to stay. Having been able to narrow this gap and really also understand applying a different modus of delivery that is much more conducive to how this generation prefers to communicate. There are many. Okay, so there are many other benefits as well. When it comes to parents, Mohammed has mentioned the fact that now parents are much more accessible. They're also much more part of what's really going on in the school. It's much more easier for them to access. And I mean, as educators, that's really what we want. We don't want to do something in isolation as a silo with students that parents are not part of. And that hurdle has been greatly reduced. If there was a hurdle before, in some cases, of course, there wasn't, but in some cases there was. So it's become much easier. And again, those are the kind of things that I'm firmly believe are there to stay and will make our future better.
Thank you, Henning. I absolutely appreciate the narrowing of the gap in communication, and we could potentially have faced a situation where the gap would have just grown larger and larger if we hadn't been thrown into this situation. And in a way, the opportunity that we have as educators to also model behavior in a way where the risks are shared now. We are all in something new together, and the risk of failure is no longer maybe a threat, and we can fail forward together, and we can demonstrate by our actions with our students that we are all learners and risk takers together. And I think that's a huge opportunity also in education for us to bring ourselves closer to our learners, and we learn from them as they learn from us. And Kevin, with your esports, for example, is a great example as well, where you bring the world of the students much closer to the world of the educator. I'm mindful of our time, but I'd love to give all of you a minute to share some future thinking. What's kind of top of mind for you until, say, for the next 6 months, until we meet again in September at the start of the next academic year? Kevin, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, look, and I think it's interesting to follow on from a comment Henning just made about parents. And, they've gone, I think, from some of them being outside observers of the education process to really sitting alongside their children and being really keenly aware of what's happening on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's built up from what I've seen, really a lot of goodwill, and it's really deepened the parents' sense of appreciation and acknowledgement of the absolutely vital role of teachers in the education process of their children. So I'm certainly looking forward to how we can capitalize on that, somewhat of that shift, and how we can use that once school comes back on campus, and really capitalize on that greater awareness and appreciation of parents of the role of the school, and hopefully create some much stronger partnerships between the school and community and its learners moving forward.
Thank you, Kevin. Mohammed, a perspective from you, the next 6 months.
Well, I hope that within the next 6 months, we can go back to the new normal of the new normal, going back to full face-to-face. And that will also require a lot of easing in for our students who are suddenly going to go back into what used to be the tradition, and then being faced again with a full online face-to-face learning. And I think what we should happen within the next 6 months and in the future is that parents should be given more access to our teaching and learning. And that is something that is now something that's dawning upon us as educators, and we need to live with it. A camera in the classroom is not a monster. It's not a threat to a teacher anymore. Camera in the classroom is actually now something positive, something that supports the teacher and the school, because everybody can see what we're doing. Of course, there's the small issue of the child safety and protection. We need to be careful and mindful of that. But parents' access to what we do is very important. Henning has spoken about that, how now our parents are actually partners in the teaching and learning operation. I mean, I've got a mother immediately calling the school saying, look, your teacher, go online and see what your teacher is doing. And the access to parents is something that we will take into the next 6 months and to the future.
Mohammed, I think you're right. I think it's something that parents also will want to be part of in the future, because they've had this exposure now. But also what we have seen happen during these months and this year of the new normal is also probably a greater appreciation from parents to the whole profession of education, and to the teachers, and to the incredible impact that our teachers have on their children, and how challenging it is for positive and well, positive challenges and less positive challenges. So that partnership with parents is something we can build on further and strengthen the relationships with our parent community, continue to give them access, because we know also that this triangular partnership is actually what is ultimately benefiting the learner absolutely most of all. When the parents are on board, they know what is happening and they support the school and the learning environment. Henning,
I agree.
Good, thanks. Henning, a last look, sorry, not a last look, but a quick look towards the next 6 months for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Look, I think time is not standing still, and we must recognize that also a number of our students are transitioning. And we are in a transitional environment anyways with the school. So we have students that are going to be graduating, that are going to be going to university. And they may go to a space that is not as well prepared as we all as schools have tried to be. These are going to be some very difficult transitions for some of our students. They go back to their home countries, they go to universities that might go into a blended learning or an online scenario. So, that's something that we are really focusing on, making sure that we are preparing those students, through this transition as best as possibly can. Or students moving from a middle into upper school, or from a lower into middle school. These are all real situations that we have to continue to support our students with, and for this to happen as smoothly as possible. And I like to I hope we could say the situation has, is no longer a problem. I think we need to recognize that will continue to haunt us for a little while longer. And we mustn't take the eye off the ball in terms of safety and making sure that, that we continue to follow protocols that protect and keep everybody safe. And also see how that in the future will impact our ways of working and our policies and procedures that we'll have in the school, because I wouldn't be surprised if a number of those things are going to be there for quite some time. Yeah. But in general, I think very positive future ahead of us. I think there are, definitely, I mentioned faculty before. I mentioned also the school leaders, our senior leaders, how they have embraced these challenges. And I think also it's good time to recognize this how they have overcome and helped all our constituents to move through this difficult time. And although we're not quite there at the end yet, but it's also good to pause and recognize the great work that those individuals have done.
Absolutely. Well said, and great concluding remarks, Henning. I think you're also absolutely right, all of you. We are going to be in this kind of normal for a while longer. I think the one thing that we will appreciate is when the day comes and we have the choice, when it is actually we as individual institutions that can choose what we want to do, and we probably thrive more when it is a chosen path instead of a forced path. But there is certainly a lot of great development that comes out of the situation that has kind of been thrown at us, and we will take away the silver linings from that. It has been a great pleasure for me to sit with Kevin Fulbrook in Kuwait, Henning Fries in Dubai, Mohammed Said also in the UAE. I thank you very much from my end. It's been great to meet with you again. I hope that guests will bring us together for the start of the next academic year, if not sooner. And we will be continuing our leadership conversations on how we can advance the learning communities that we all appreciate so much. Thank you very much, Stanley, for facilitating this opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, Yannicka, Henning, Kevin, and Mohammed. That was very informative and insightful. If anyone from the audience has any questions pertaining to the session, you can connect with the panelists through the networking system on the virtual event platform. We'd also love to hear from you, so feel free to share any thoughts or comments by sending us an email to marketing@guesteducation.com. We'll be on social media as well during the summit, so if you want to chat to us there, follow us on Twitter @guesteducation and use the hashtags #guestglobal and #guesteducation. We hope that you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you, take care, and bye-bye for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.